First and foremost, we have to recognise sort of who we are. And we have to get the players, the coaches of the wider football game to look at the past, because the past has a significant impact. You know, what we don't want to be doing is creating something that doesn't recognise huge amounts of good work that has gone on within the professional game in this country. So we have to recognise the past, things like what the badge means, you know, what the anthem means, you know, without going into too much detail. The players and the staff have to have real pride in playing for England. So if we can really make those connections, I think we've got a great chance of getting some success.
It was always the pinnacle of my goals was to represent my country. I still think that's the case. And I still think boys that come into the system at 15, 16 believe that way. And the better players, the top players, still believe that right the way through the system. And if we're to be successful, then that's the mindset needs to be that the pride in playing for England underpins everything.
For me, being an England player was all about, you're representing your country no matter what environment you're in, whether you're with your club, whether you're with your family. You're always an international player, so you live well, you know, you train well, you treat people well. So your values, your morals, your beliefs are really important at all times. But
what we have to also do is recognise that the modern player looks and feels different now, but they have to have a real grasp of, you know, the culture of what we're trying to create, even if it's down as far as how we present the shirt to them, how we present the caps, you know, how we induct them into the England squads. There's some really key detail, that messages that we need to get across to the players to ensure that they buy in, that they know when they come and play for England, it's special.
Our older age groups should be setting the professionalism and the way of working, that new players coming in, it just becomes a habit that they understand this is the way we work when we're with England, and it's not necessarily questioned in terms of the professionalism and the learning mindset, the growth mindset. We feel that values and culture in the first instance underpin everything else.
Then another big one is how we coach the players. So, you know, we know how we're going to play. We know what an England player needs to look like to be able to play our way. But then how do we get the key messages across to the players? And that's on and off the field. So what we're developing is a clear training strategy around how we train the players for every session, for every event. And then we've got a game strategy based around, well, okay, pre, during and post game, you know, how do we prepare for games with England players? What are we like during the games? How do we make decisions? You know, how do we act? How do we try and portray ourselves as coaches throughout the age groups? Again, so the players are getting consistent messages. And then again, the review. You know, how do we review games in a consistent way? How do we share that feedback with players? How do we get their views on things?
The sessions on the field give us an opportunity to learn, but we don't want players standing around in every session for hours. So we want to keep the ball rolling. Whether a player's 6-year-old or 36, they don't particularly want to stand around for too long and have a coach talking and talking and talking. So the messages need to be concise. The training sessions need to be enjoyable. And within that, learning can take place at the right moments. In the general working week, the time on the grass, we have an hour and 20 minutes. Let's maximise it and have the ball out for as much as possible in the warm-ups, right the way through to the end of the session.
We've got quite some strong views on the training strategy, for example. So, you know, they've got targets for the ball rolling. So the players are active. They've come to train. You know, they've not come to stand still and listen. So it would be reasonably high tempo. The ball would be rolling a lot of the time during the training sessions. It will be nice and smooth as they move around from one activity to the next. A lot of our work will be possession based. We need the players and want the players to be able to deal with the ball. So we need to make sure that when the players come in, we fully utilise that time. We've got them for 24 hours a day. So we use the time before training to plan, we use the time after training to review, and for the players to review their own performance as well. So perhaps hand some accountability and some ownership back to the players for some of the things that they would like to see, some of the things that they want to develop within their game, and just make sure that we have the environment where they're free to speak up, they're free to take ownership of some of their development, and they're free to be a part of the process, because again, the coaches don't have all the answers. Some of the players have got some terrific ideas, and it's really important that we add them into the whole process of developing players and developing teams.
Well, international football, of course, does tend to pose more questions than domestic football. You're playing vastly different teams, especially if it's in a World Cup, because you're playing teams from other continents. And also, of course, you know, you're very much aware that all of those tournament games, they're pretty much knockout games, and you've got to really know how to manage the game, and in particular you've got to make certain that the players who are playing for you understand their roles fully, know exactly what's required of them and how they fit in, if you like, as a cog in the wheel to make the team successful. Games have a pattern and a story of their own always. You know, no games are exactly alike, and even when you prepare your team to play a certain opponent, you might even be able to do a very good job preparing the team, giving them a very, very clear idea of, you know, what to expect. But things then happen in the game. You know, you get a player sent off, or you start the game well and you get a very unfair penalty against you, which knocks people's confidence for a little period of time. So game management really is developing mental strength, I think, as much as anything.
In possession, there's four key things. So, you know, our first thought is can we counter-attack? And that's not because we want to be a direct team. It just means when you win the ball back, the other team tend to be out of balance. So is there an opportunity to go and hurt them early? If not, we want to make sure that we're sensible with possession and we're able to retain it, we're able to keep it. But football's a simple game, it's an invasion game, and you have to get from there to there. So, you know, we keep it for a purpose. So we're looking to progress and penetrate. And then games are won and lost in the penalty area. So we want that creating and scoring phase to be of the top level. So we want inventive players, players that can beat other players. And a lot of teams, when they come to England, will play a deep block. They'll get compact, and they're difficult to break down. So we need those players that can create things from nothing, really. So that would be in possession and making sure we're able to deal with the ball. Out of possession is we're able to win it back quickly. So I think in this country we're suited to be able to press. The Premier League and the Football League are both high intensity leagues. I think as a nation we've always had that attribute, and it's a really good attribute. We want to win the ball back early, and we want to try and get it back and play a high tempo game. So I don't think we should try and change that. But we just need to be sensible in the times that we do press it. So if we can't win it back straight away, we'll retreat to an agreed pressing line and then look for an opportunity to win it back again. Really,
to be a successful team, we need to control possession in matches. If we look at the successful teams over the last 10, 12 years, that's definitely been the case. And if we look in the future, I can only see that increasing. So very clear that we're patient with that if we're behind in games, we stick to the plan. I felt England teams maybe I played in historically, we just used to lump things in the box and play very direct, because under pressure we're trying to get a goal and it becomes quite a random process. We're trying to encourage our younger teams to keep playing the right ball. If you keep possession for long enough, teams tire, their concentration goes, gaps appear, and then you have to be ruthless in the penalty boxes at either end to make sure that all of the good work that goes in between the two penalty areas is executed.
I think most of our teams will play a version of 4-3-3. And the reason being that we believe that in international football it's the best way of developing young players. Now that's got nothing to do with Mark or Roy's formation, because they are purely results based. So Mark and Roy may well tweak and change their system of play to a specific opponent. So without the youth development pathway, most of it will be around 4-3-3, because it's a really good way of developing players and putting them in a situation where they've got to take responsibility. However, it's not set for two reasons. One, because there might be a certain situation where we feel we need to change formation against a given opponent or in a given tournament. And number two, in youth development, we've got a duty to get our best players on the pitch. So if our best two players in the under-18s are two number 9s and two centre forwards, we have to play a shape and a system and a formation where we have two centre forwards. So it might be 4-4-2, it might be a diamond, it might be 3-5-2, but we've got to get those two on the pitch because they're the best players in the country. So we've got a duty to do that. And I suppose the only other thing to take into consideration is one of your duties in youth development is you've got to give players an experience of different systems. So if Roy and Mark, or whoever the senior staff are at that time, decide they want to change from one system to another quickly, the players have got that tactical flexibility that they can change, and even better, the players are able to change themselves.
Then we've got, I guess, how we support the players. So all the support services that go around all the national teams, again, down as far as physiotherapy support, sports science support, diet and nutrition, and how we supporting the boys psychologically. The younger ones, how are we providing educational support for those ones who are doing GCSEs or A-levels or BTECs. You know, they may be away with us on national camps for 2, potentially 3 weeks. So how are we ensuring that, you know, they're not falling behind or missing elements of their work? So, you know, and I think they're the inches that make the difference between success. So if the players understand how they want to play or how we want to play as England, if they then know what their roles are and responsibilities, because we've done the position specific stuff, we've coached them around training and game strategy so they're really prepared. If we're then giving them the additional inches, so if they're, you know, in terms of the preparation for games, if that's right, so they're going into games really feeling ready and strong, I think, again, you know, the inches make the difference. We've got a great opportunity of maximising what we're all about, which is about creating winning England teams.
We wanted to put down on paper what we stand for, what do we believe in, how do we want our players to look, how do we want to play, how do we want to coach, how do we want to look after our players before competition, during competition, after competition, how do we want to travel. So one of the mantras that we have is the only thing that changes is the size of the shirt. So as they come through that player pathway from an under 15 boy or girl all the way through to the seniors, we've got some consistent messages around it.
I think everybody at every level of the game is looking for leadership from the FA to say, this is what we believe, you're part of the process of developing future England winning teams, because everybody that touches a player along the pathway will have played a part from grassroots, from their first experiences of football through club academies into the national team. There's consistency of messages, and a lot of that will come back to needing the player to have a growth mindset and wanting to continually learn and improve.
The purpose is to define England teams and England players for the future. We have to have a seamless structure where there's a golden thread that runs through all of the teams, that we're coaching them consistently. The messages are the same. We're playing the same way. We're selecting talent in the same way to play that, to play the England way. So we have to ensure we get those core elements right. If we don't, what tends to happen is players will progress through the age groups, and the messages will be confused.
Something that we tried to do at one of my former clubs is to try and do something really similar, you know, try and join up some of our practice from first team down to the junior teams, the 8 and 9-year-olds in the academy, as well as scouting, as well as performance services. And I just feel that if everybody's on the same page and everybody buys into and believes what you're trying to do, it becomes so much more powerful.
The one thing it won't be is a paper document, because as soon as you put words on paper that are out of date, it's emerging and evolving and it'll grow.
It's the emerging DNA. I don't think it's ever finished. I think we're always looking to improve. I don't think anybody's claiming we've got the answers and we're absolutely sure everything is right. We'll keep tweaking it, we'll keep changing it, we'll keep listening to opinions, and we'll keep improving it.
The aim of the research within the FA right now is we're trying to get high quality, evidence-based, up-to-date information and research to go and inform policy, and then it's got to be practically applied, because all we want and everybody wants at the FA, better coaches and better players. So if we can try and do that through research, then I think we're in a better place for the DNA and going forward. How best can we equip the coaches to see using interventions, coaching methods, coaching styles, the behaviour on the touchline, the whole package. And if we can help them, then I'm sure the byproduct will be better players. We'll benchmark with the top sports in this country, cycling, cricket, golf, rugby union and rowing. as well as the top 5 European nations: France, Holland, Germany, Spain, Italy. We've got to live and breathe our values, and certainly instilled in the coaching research and what the values actually mean to us, and whether it's the integrity of the quality of the research, whether it's global collaboration, or it's excellence through we're world leading, because I think no other World Football Association does coaching research to the extent that we do. And I think that falls onto pride. We've got to be proud of that, you know, but not actually rest on our laurels, but build on year to make sure we maintain our standards and keep at the top of that. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, so it is hope that in the next 10, 15 years or way into the future that the evidence-based research that we're doing will be embedded in everything that we do, and really provide the rationale for the DNA to know what we're doing and how we're doing it.
The process has been brilliant, I think, in the fact that we've included everybody, not only within the Football Association, but we've also into the wider game. So it started about 16, 17 months ago with the national coaches. So we started talking about, let's get some profiles of the types of players that we want playing for England, and we can see making that journey through to the seniors, both in the male and female game.
What we've been able to do is to step back, take everything into consideration, look at really clearly defining what we want to achieve over the next 5 or 10 years. And that process has been fascinating because you don't get that chance in football often. You're always either you're coaching, you're working with players, you're delivering on an event internally. So it's been a really good process for the national coaches to get together. And we've had hours and hours. You know, every Monday has been DNA for the last year. Every Monday we've been working on what England players need to look like. You know, how do we want to play? So we've really gone down and drilled down into some detail. We had a lot of debate around certain elements of the game, and you know, there was lots of conversations around, I agree with that, or I'm not sure about that. But the one concept that we spoke about is that when we leave the room and we agree on something, it's a consistent message across all of the national coaches. What we try to do then is to internally look at programs like the FAYCE program, the FA Youth Coach Education program, which works in the professional clubs. So we try to engage them in the process to really get a professional club's perspective on it, because at the end of the day, we're loaning players from the clubs. So we have to be mindful of what programs they're doing and how those, I guess, those two things, the DNA and the club's philosophy, link together. We've also then look to involve national coach educators, the guys who are delivering the coach education programs, because if we're really going to make a significant impact, the DNA has to run through coach education. We've also then involved the skills program, the guys that work at grassroots level, the regional coach development managers, because the grassroots game is also important. That's the starting point of all the work that we want to do, because it's a stepping stone process to get to the end product, which is to play for your country and develop England players for the future. But along that pathway, everybody has a part to play. So it's recognising and trying to bring that to the forefront. We have to engage with the football world, because at the end of the day, if we don't get that right, we're going to create something that doesn't fit within the professional game, the grassroots game. There'll be some great practice going on within the professional game that we have to tap into. There'll be some great practice going on in grassroots football that we will have to tap into and tailor to improve our DNA going forward. But it's been a valuable process that has to continue consistently over the next 5 or 10 years, because there will definitely be tweaks and changes to what we're trying to achieve. What is an England player? What does an England player need to look like? What skills and attributes do they need to have to play the England way? So it's no good saying that we want to play this way and we're actually not selecting the players that reflect how we want to play.
So we have to look at the players technically, tactically, physically, socially, psychologically, but we have to understand more about the temperament and the physical qualities of the player. So over a period of time, this is something that will develop. It won't just be, that's the profile of the player and that's it. It will continue to develop as the game develops.
The key characteristics of a future England player will be technically very comfortable in possession of the ball under pressure. There'll be a physical resilience and robustness. The mental resilience of players will be critical. The ability to withstand successes and failures which can knock players off focus in terms of their career pathway. A constant desire to be the best they can be. So never accepting that they know everything, never accepting that there's nothing else for them to learn. The very best people want to continually learn and improve.
We're going through some fundamental discussions in the talent identification world at the moment. You know, the talent developers, the coaches, the sports scientists have become incredibly skilled at getting the best out of the players that we have. What we need to make sure in talent identification, it's not just about the here and now, it's about trying to understand all of the factors that affect a player during his development, which we have to try and keep them in the system longer, more of them in the system longer. Try and avoid making just snapshot decisions on the basis of what we see that day. Age bias, I mean, it's a huge discussion at the moment, you know, depending upon the month you're born in. We have if you take our 1997s, we could have a player in that squad that was born on the 1st of January and a player in the squad that was born on the 31st of December. You know, there's a 12-month difference in that player, but they're playing in the same group. So birth bias is a hot topic. But there's so many other factors. It's the psychological developments, it's the social and the cultural differences where players come from, the values that we uphold and what we want out of our players, what makes the players tick. So there's growth, and there's things called growth mindset and grit and determination. It's players being able to recover from a setback and see how they come back stronger. You know, the clubs are incredible at developing players now, and I've been fortunate, I've travelled the world looking at players, and nobody can tell me that there's talent anywhere else in the world which is better than what we've got in this country. There isn't. The talent in this country is here. It's our job collectively to make sure we keep them in the system and get the best out of them.